His reviews will get you further than the film will ever go. If you give him just a moment of your time, he'll let you know which movies rock, which movies stink, which movies shouldn't have been released. Say hello to Confused Matthew.
Nothing drives me nuts quite like a movie that wastes my time. We'll talk about that here and when I review the movie 12 Monkeys, but speaking of time, I want to apologize for how late this request is coming to you, as well as to explain why it is so tardy. I couldn't find this movie anywhere, and when I finally broke down and rented it off of Netflix, lo and behold, the first 2 copies sent to me were damaged beyond recognition, presumably by the poor schlubs who had previously sat through it. If that isn't an indication of how bad this movie is, I don't know what is. But I do have to say that for as bad as Lost in Space is, it's bad in a pretty harmless way. In fact, the first 2/3 of the film are merely either routine or generic, nothing that would really insult the intelligence. It's only when we get to the very last half of the movie that all logic and reason go out the window, and we may as well be watching the Matrix sequels. As you could probably guess, this movie is based on the old TV show Lost in Space, but loosely based. If you're a fan of the old show, you aren't going to get very many homages to it. The film isn't celebrating that series' good times or its campy flaws the way, say, the 90s Brady Bunch movie did. It's basically just a generic backdrop of sci-fi mixed with routine situations. Space dissidents, a family being torn apart by the dad's grueling work schedule, the gung-ho pilot who was the best man for a mission he didn't sign up for. The movie tries to be just about everything. Except a Lost in Space movie. It all starts out with a lot of setups and positioning. The dad is taking his family along on a mission to colonize another planet, but the youngest of the kids aren't happy about this, and who can blame them, and the family problems ensue. A run-and-gun pilot who doesn't play by the rules is assigned to fly the mission and reluctantly agrees, and finally a mad doctor is sent by the dissidents to sabotage the project, which he does, but is soon after abandoned by them and must work with the family to save himself. This film falls into 3 acts, and this was the first. We establish the basic framework for where this film can go. Family learns to work together and becomes a family again. Smith must compromise in order to survive, etc. You set all this up so that these issues can resolve themselves in a story. At least, that's the ideal. But here's what we actually get. They use their hyperdrive to escape the collision course Dr. Smith set for the sun and end up God knows where in the galaxy. Soon after, they come across what looks to be a tear in space with a ship in it. They explore the ship and discover that it's one of theirs, but far more advanced than they've ever seen. They also see a recording of someone the pilot knows, only he's older with a higher rank. You'd think that what's going on here would be obvious, but it takes these people way too long to figure out that this is from the future. Then the ship gets attacked by tiny space spiders, and I'm thinking, what does this have to do with Lost in Space? They all get away, but the maneuver the pilot uses to kill all the spiders gets them stranded on a planet. So on the planet, they detect the fuel they need for the ship is on the other side of a big bubble that seems to lead to another time. Will comments that the bubble is the exact side effect he predicted when he made his elementary time machine prototype. Combining that with the fact that the exact type of fuel they need is in the time bubble, you'd think that that would clue the dad in on what's going on here, but he just shoots Will's idea down even though it all makes perfect sense, because the film needs strife. Now, that was the second act, a big spider attack and exposition, but no one has actually done anything yet. The third and final act of this film may contain the most broken logic I have ever seen. I can't say for certain, but I am hard-pressed to find a time paradox that makes less sense than this. Time paradoxes have never made 100% sense, but this truly is broken. Try to follow me on this one. The dad and the pilot cross the barrier into what seems to be the future. They eventually get attacked by a robot and are taken to a disheveled man in a ship identical to their own. Upon seeing this, the father character asks the man, "Who are you?" Well, let's think about that for a second, Dad. There's only so many people he could be. You're in the future, and your company is comprised of 4 males and 3 females. So unless they got really bored and did a few experimental surgeries, it's obviously not one of the girls. It can't be either you or the pilot, since you guys crossed the barrier, and he's too young to be the future version of Dr. Smith. So really, who do you think it is? The older version of Will explains that after these 2 left, a few leftover spiders came and killed all the women. Isn't that just like space spiders? Will was left over to fend for himself, and he built a device that can send him back in time and prevent the Jupiter 2 from launching. The dad informs him that if he does that, he will likely cause a distortion the likes of which they've been seeing here that will tear the Earth apart, but Will doesn't listen to him. Why? Because, he tells his dad, why would I listen to you? You never did anything but lie to me. I remember before you went through the barrier, you said you were coming back. Well, you never did, and now look what happened, you bad man. Hey, moron, he went through the barrier because of you. He didn't come back because of you. So meanwhile, on the other side of the barrier, Dr. Smith convinces Will to go and rescue his dad. So he and Will go across the barrier, but Smith pulls a gun on Will and takes him into the future ship. He commandeers the robot and intends to hijack future Will's machine, but it's unclear what he was planning to do before he learned the machine existed. I mean, it's not like he knew it was there or anything. But then the future version of Smith, who is now some kind of giant man spider, comes and rescues everyone from himself. He grabs his past self and chucks him out a window, intending to kill him. This is where the basics of logic all start to break down around us. First, it doesn't make any sense that Will would remember his dad telling him that he'd be back, but not that he went with Smith across the barrier just a few minutes later and saw all of this happen. Second, why doesn't the future Smith remember encountering his past self? And most obviously of all, how is the future Smith still alive if he killed his past self? Well, maybe we can get past that part as we later learn that Smith didn't really die. But let's see what else happens in this mess. The Robinsons get captured, but the robot eventually chooses to side with them. Then after all this time, after all these years and years that he's had to put this together, Will finally figures out that Smith killed his entire family and not the residual spiders, as he never actually saw any residual spiders. It is finally revealed that Spider Smith let Will live so that he could build the machine, and he intends to use it to go back to the Earth of the past and let his baby spiders feed, creating a race of super spiders. What the hell does any of this have to do with Lost in Space? I mean, how the hell did this movie end up here? They should have titled this thing Attack of the Space Spiders at this point. It has nothing to do either with Lost in Space or being lost in space at all. So the family comes and eliminates the Smith spider, and everyone but the dad returns to the Jupiter 2 with the fuel they need, and they lift off and try and escape. Now get this, the dad and future Will watch them lift off, and they see a meteor come and smash the ship into smithereens, killing everyone on board, including Will! Well, this logically means that the future Will would cease to exist, right? Wrong. Evidently, Smith had the wrong idea. Will apparently doesn't even need to be alive to build this machine. This is why I say the time paradox logic here isn't just bad, it's broken. So yada yada yada, the kid sends the dad through the thing to do a do-over, and they all escape unharmed. The planet blows up, causing them to use their hyperdrive again, and then roll the credits. The only way this movie may have been justifiable is if it were not a movie, but rather a pilot for a television series. In fact, that's exactly what it felt like. A pilot. The foot in the door project that only exists to get a series rolling. But as a standalone film, it was just a whopping illogical disaster. I was never a big fan of the Lost in Space series, but seeing this film makes me feel bad for the people that were. Maybe one day they will make a movie that captures what that series did for its fans. For now, however, the film version of this series truly is lost. The end.